And welcome everybody to Paranormal Zone TV. And tonight is Season 2, Episode 1 of the Horsefly Chronicles Paranormal Phenomena Experiments. And Season 2 is, topic is Alien Demon Connection. And our guest tonight is Mike Bara from History Channel's Ancient Aliens. So now I will turn the show over to Phil Siracusa and Karissa Fleck. Hi guys, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you, Norene, for having us. Season 2, it's going to be really exciting. And we got a lot covered last season. Now we're switching it up a bit, and the beliefs of aliens and demons, having that connection. And Mike Bara, as you said, on Ancient Aliens, very well-spoken person. So, Mike, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm just a dude who was listening to Art Bell's show one night, and you guys remember Coast to Coast AM, right? Yep. And you know, I was listening to Richard Hoagland on there, and he was talking about images of the moon and stuff, and what you could see on these pictures, and he said, you know, Art, anybody can do this. Anybody can get pictures out of NASA's archives and start looking at them, and if they find stuff, they can send it to me, and we can go forward from there. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm anybody. And so what I did was I started looking at pictures of the moon. And, you know, being a structural aerospace engineer, I started to find some stuff. And I started to get really interested in what was there. And I got in contact with the Hoagie, and I started writing stuff for his blog, or his website at the time, and before they actually had blogs. And it just kind of all took off from there. One day I said to him in 2006 or 2007, why don't we take all this stuff we put on the web for free and turn it into a book? And he said yes, and like 2.5 years of absolute torture later, Dark Mission, The Secret History of NASA came out. And it was very successful, and I've kind of taken off and written a lot of my own books since then.
Awesome. You know, I wanted to have you on for this first show because I think a lot of people don't even think of the possibility of a demonic and alien-like connection or tie. Mm-hmm. And you and I have had this conversation many of times, so I figured you'd be the perfect person to bring in for this round table discussion of this topic to kind of start the season off.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think I agree. I think there's more of a connection between the supernatural and the spiritual world than people actually appreciate. And you know, there's a lot of things about abductions that people don't know that involve dead relatives and things like that. And so the question is, where's the crossover? What's going on? And why does it exist? And what's the connection? You know, what's the connection? And if aliens are working with demons, what does that say about who the aliens are?
Exactly. Or if there's aliens working with loved ones that have passed on too. You know, like
right.
Close connection. I mean, what's it say about what we really think to be the truth?
So,
yeah.
With that said, I just want to jump in here really quick. Those of you who have been following Horsefly Chronicles, my story,
guys,
demons.
Did I lose you guys?
No, we still see you, Mike.
Hello.
Yeah, we're here.
You're still on our end, sunshine.
Okay, all right, okay. I couldn't hear a word from you guys. I thought there was going to be another question, so.
No.
No, okay, all right.
Actually, I was talking, and then somehow
Phil's trying to get into it with his bullet points.
Oh, okay, and I didn't hear it.
So I want to backtrack again for the viewers that watched last season. And I wanted to say why I believe that there is a connection between aliens and demons. In my perspective, as a 48-year-old man, the life that I live. So, most people know that they follow the story, and that's a haunting, and we've caught apparitions and EVPs and things that can't be explained. Also, through a lot of podcasts over the last 3 years, I talk about an alien connection to this. Mm-hmm. And while I have no ties of seeing a UFO personally, I have other encounters that I like to explain. And then having you on the show tonight, Mike Bara, maybe you could bring some light to it. 1972. As a young child, I remember us being with a white helmet, Staten Island, New York, through mental telepathy, taking my spiritual body, not my physical body, through and taking me to a piece of property upstate New York, Akron, New York. Now, when he talked to me through mental telepathy. And as a child going through adolescence, I thought it was like a bad dream that was actually happening at the time. I asked him to take off the helmet. He says, I cannot because I will scare you. So he says, I have things to tell you. Now, this is through the mind he's talking. He says, in years to come, now this is 1972, your family will purchase this property as we're hovering over a dam.
It wasn't Whitley Strieber's cabin by any chance, was it?
No, my family's cabin.
Okay, all right.
So he was telling me things that he foreseen happening within my life. And then today I woke up thinking it was a bad nightmare, at the age of 4 or 5 years old. In 1981, I was 14 years old. It was a summer day. Me and my friends were playing out in the neighborhood. It was jam-packed against Staten Island, New York. There's like 50 of us on the street. And I remember that I had to go home to use the bathroom. So I'm walking halfway up the block, and I was stopped frozen. Not like ice, but through my mind. I couldn't move. And these are the words that this being says to me. Philip, are you having a good time in your life? And I said, yes, through my mind. And now I could hear my friends yelling at me, Phil, move, this car's coming, move. But I couldn't move. Good, Philip, this being said, because this is where you will wind up when your life journey is complete. And then I was released. And then I remember being shaken up. My friends took me back to where we were hanging out. I didn't even have to use the bathroom at that point. I wasn't understanding what was happening. In 1986, upstate New York, Akron, New York, dead of winter, might have been January or February, it was me, my father, and my brother. To the cabin, it's about a half a mile from the road, and it was a bad snowstorm. We couldn't get the car in, so we had to walk. As we're walking, a bright light, winter night, it was getting dark out, lit up the whole property. Now we're talking several hundred acres. We had to close our eyes really quick, didn't know what was happening, and then it was gone. So that to us was something that was unexplainable. At the time of 1986, we thought it might have been a shooting star or something, but then again, it's impossible for that to light up an entire piece of property that's over 200 acres.
Well, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's not likely. It's not likely that was the cause. So, yeah.
1997, upstate New York. It was me, my ex-girlfriend, my parents were in the cabin, same place, Akron, New York. And we were outside. It was a Saturday night, about 9 or 10 o'clock, and this thing was walking down the stone.
And I can't hear you guys again.
Can you hear us now? What about now? I feel like this is a commercial.
I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Great. So, 1997, me and my ex-girlfriend had seen this thing. We thought it was first the bear, upstate New York, coming down about 100 yards away. And we were trying to make out what this thing was as it was getting closer and closer. But it didn't look right. And the next thing I remember is I was screaming for my father to actually get the gun because it didn't look right. And my ex-girlfriend was being drawn to it, walking closer and closer. She still had a distance about 50 yards away, but I didn't feel right because it didn't look right from the distance. It was very short, very thin, but we couldn't make out what it was. And then it just took off into the woods. In July of 2007, Easton, Pennsylvania, which is documented by other people, not myself, there was an encounter that's unexplainable, but I'll tell it the way it is. I remember being in bed, laying down late at night, falling asleep watching television.
Right.
Next thing I remember is that a bright light came through the window. These beings, there were 3 of them. They were very tall, very thin, with long, silky fingers. I remember as if I couldn't fight them. I couldn't break out of it. I was in a stronghold. I was levitated a couple inches off the mattress. I remember my wife sitting up ready to get to scream, but she couldn't. And then I was turned around, and then something I felt they were doing to me, implanted in the back of my head. Now, I remember what these things looked like. They were very tall. They were very silky, long fingers, but they control a piece of the brain that we can't fight.
Well, did they have human faces or did they have alien type faces?
Alien.
Okay.
Alien.
So
they were long, thin faces, big eyes, and I remember something happening. And the next day I woke up and thinking it was a dream, a very bad nightmare. So the weekend came, and a friend of mine who was a hardcore biker at the time, he goes, "Did you hear about the UFO sighting?" I says, "No, I didn't." He says, "I had a bad dream, but I didn't hear about no UFO sighting." And he goes, "Oh, everybody's talking about it in the neighborhood." So I went to work a couple of days later. I worked on a computer in South Plainfield, New Jersey, and in my left ear, I always felt this tingling sensation every time I would hold the phone to it, like something wasn't right. Then I remember we had to move things in the house, and I can't to this day pick up a mattress. I get shocks.
It's a
through my
true
fingers.
story. I've seen it.
I actually get shocks that go right through my fingers, and it hurts really bad.
Wow, that's weird. Okay.
People ask me to this day, what happened, and I was able to look up records that there were sightings and documentation that people have seen this metallic craft hovering over eastern Pennsylvania, July of 2007. So over these 5 encounters of my entire life that I've had, people ask me what is the connection between a ghostly haunting and demons. There can't be. I will tell everybody that I'm not 100% positive, but I can look at anybody, and I mean this. I don't need Fox News or CNN or my government telling me that there's aliens, whether I believe it or not, because the fact is we're not alone.
Yeah.
A lot of these things that happened are not psychosomatic, power of thought or suggestion, or me reading into, because quite frankly, I don't read books. I don't study it, and I'll brief through channels the things that I have an interest in. But dealing with these personal experiences, they're facts. These things did happen to me. It happened to my wife. Do I think there was a chip implanted? Most definitely. Can I prove it? No, I can't prove it. But there are things that I see that was on a show last season, Norene's show, and then Karen, she says you're able to see into different dimensions. How is that possible? Look, I'm not a psychic, I'm not a medium, but sometimes I get the power of thought that comes through me that I can see things that other people don't see. And I think it's like an imagination or just maybe hallucination. And that would have been great if I drank or took drugs. But I'm like all health oriented and all that. And I can tell you that having over 25 different paranormal teams to my home, some of the teams, some of them, and Karissa Fleck will say, you know what, there's ghostly, there's demon, but then there's things that don't make any sense. And that's called alienated because it has nothing to do with the other. We try to explain to each other, but we really can't. A couple of summers ago when Karissa was here.
No, I'll tell this.
Now Karissa will fill this
y'all
part
jump in. You can shh for
Go
a
ahead.
second. But, no,
When Karissa was sunbathing nude on the backyard, and what happened? What happened, Karissa?
Yeah, totally, Mike. That's totally what I was doing. Typical day for Karissa. If you ask everyone that hates me, that's totally what I do every day.
That's right. So all the neighbors' kids can see you.
I actually was watching a horror movie. Shocker, guys. That's what I really do in my spare time. But I just want to say before we go into the story that I never believed in aliens. I never believed in demons. And then I met this man right here that, unfortunately, for good and bad, totally showed me that these things do exist. I still didn't believe in aliens at this point, I want to say. I always thought, hey, there might be something out there, but I have never experienced it, so who knows?
Right.
We were watching the movie Signs with his child, and I guess this was like 2 summers ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, my memory's not the greatest, but whatever. It was like
pretty good movie right up until the aliens can't get through a wood door, but yeah.
Yeah, the movie was good. I enjoyed it. I should have put on a tinfoil hat after watching it, apparently. But there was this time lapse. I remember after the movie, we were drinking tea, right? And I want to say 2.5, 3 hours had passed when we came to, and we were just confused as to where we were and what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
There was no logical way that time could have passed because the movie had ended at a certain time and we sat down. Our tea was still in our cups, and it was, I think, warm, which is even creepier. It was still in our cups. We hadn't touched it because all 3 of us just looked at each other and we were just so confused and lost. And I guess that was my first experience with something weird.
Yeah.
And I didn't really connect the dots until later on. I started seeing 3 lights in the sky that no one else would see. And we've had this talk. I told you about that. And, like, I would be like, don't you guys see them? They're right there. And Phil and all of his kids and everyone would be like, no. I'd be like, I guess I'm the only one that can see them. But apparently, according to you, that is kind of common.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And then I talked to your friend, actually, because I had you make a post asking for alien people in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
Yeah, she told me she is a psychic, and she told me that I'm actually chipped myself, that they've been following me since I was a child, and I just started realizing it now. She also told me to look out for the owls. Now, I will tell you one thing. I never saw an owl. Listen,
the owls are not what they seem. That's right.
She said that, but I never saw an owl before she said that. And then I'm telling you, every day for a week, there was a freaking owl outside as I was leaving Phil's house. I'm like, why?
It wasn't an owl. I'll tell you, it wasn't an owl. It's funny that the line, the owls are not where they seem, comes from a 90s cult TV show called Twin Peaks, which was directed and created by David Lynch. And they received, in the show, alien messages from space on the radio that said the owls are not what they seem. It was just sort of a creepy little thing that was put in the show and never really explained. But Whitley Strieber is the first one that really talked about having an overlay memory where he would see the face of what he thought was an owl, and it was only under hypnotic regression that he realized later it was actually, the face of an alien that his mind couldn't deal with, so it flipped it in his mind to something that looked reasonably close, and in that case it was an owl. So that's where the owl stuff typically comes from.
Is it common for people to see owls? Like, I'm just asking, because I didn't, until she said that to me.
I hear you guys again.
Okay, can you hear us
Hello.
now? Hi, can you hear me now? How about a shot? Hi?
Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Now I can hear you.
We're playing a commercial.
Yeah, okay.
But, it was weird. It's just weird, a lot of things. During the first season, we actually did an ITC session with Dave Spinks, and I started asking alien-like questions, and Norene and Phil can contest that that's when stuff got really creepy. The app started, the static and sound, and it was pretty creepy. It was repeating things. I asked if I was chipped, and it said mine, mine, mine over and over again. It said 7 to sacrifice. So I really don't know what's going on. I do think there's a connection between demons and aliens, and that's why I find topics like this so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Just to comment on what I just heard, what Phil talked about, that's classic abduction stuff. And what happens with people in general with these abduction experiences is that you do have a lot of the experiences in sort of that nether world between sleep and awakening, where you're kind of in an in-between state. And a lot of those experiences take place because that's an easy way for either the spirits or the alien entities to come in and communicate with you. And, the being that said, I can't take my mask off because it will scare you, was really doing you a favor, because, aliens a lot of them have appearances that are very, very frightening to us because we don't really understand them, or they're confusing to us. And, I think that's an indication of a benevolent contact. What happens to a lot of people is that they will work on you. They may put an implant into you, or they may do work with your body and your spirit and your mind while you're in a conscious state. It's interesting because I have a friend who's very psychic, and I recently asked her if I could have some help with some issues around my health that I wanted to get fixed up and resolved. And, immediately after that, I started having all these weird experiences right in that sort of dream time, right before dream time, not really in a dream time. And so I know they're around. I know that they're working on me. In my case, I guess I'm lucky in that I don't remember the specific experiences, but I do have a couple that I can recall from my life that both seemed like dreams, and I passed off for years as dreams. And I'm pretty sure were not dreams, but they were sort of those communications in that in-between astral plane kind of thing that we get into right before we fall asleep or right before we wake up, which is the best time for them to come in and do their work. So I think in many cases the implants or the work that's being done on your bodies is to help open you up for more communication and for more information and for changes that will hopefully end up being beneficial to you. So that's kind of how the process works, and I think that's kind of what the spiritual entities are are all about. Having said that, there are definitely negative aliens, and I want to separate aliens from extraterrestrials. To me, an extraterrestrial is somebody who could look and appear very, very human, but in fact lives on another planet and is not from Earth. So that's, to me, genetically related, but not necessarily from the planet Earth. And aliens are beings that are completely different. So there is this crossover between the spirit realm and the extraterrestrials and the aliens, because I think that's when they can most readily make communication with us, and that's when you're going to have these sort of strange experiences that that are going to kind of, freak you out a little bit. And I guess the thing I would say about it is try not to let them freak you out, because we're the normal ones. We're actually the ones that have these communications and pay attention to them. Other people have them and then completely suppress them and ignore them, and they'll never actually gain any benefit from the attempts at communication. I had one case a little over a year ago where there was definitely an attempt to communicate, and I just got a little bit too scared, and I said no, and I now regret not letting that communication go forward, because it might have been really, really interesting. So,
So
the way
let me
things
ask you
go.
this, Mike. Do you think that I'm chipped?
Probably, or that the thing is, they could be in there working on you without necessarily leaving a chip in you or leaving some sort of implant in you. They can go in there and work on you and change your body physically without having to leave something behind. So, they may do an X-ray or an MRI of you and not find anything in there. Doesn't mean you weren't worked on years and years and years ago, and they may have completed the work that they were doing, and now they don't need that thing in there anymore. So they either came back and removed it, or your body just naturally disposed of it. They've got a lot of interesting technologies. Dr. Roger Lear is somebody who worked a lot with these kinds of things, implants, and came up with a lot of interesting theories as to what they were for, how they worked, and how the body ended up either hanging on to them or getting rid of them. So, yeah, I would say that the odds are that you are. Or at least you were.
And what test can I do?
Well, I think the only thing, here's what I would do in your situation, is if you're really, really curious as to what's going on, and if you had the contact doesn't seem like it was that bad. I mean, if the alien said, I can't show you my face because it'll scare you, meaning he didn't want to scare you, maybe he's a good guy. So what I would do is right before bed, I would spend a little time praying, meditating, whatever you want to call it, and say, look, whoever you are, you're welcome to come back and let's have a chat. And I'd kind of like to know what's going on, what you did to me, and, whether it's for my benefit or not, and find out what the answer is.
Now, what I did see, first, I can't lift the mattress, even to this day. I can't. We tried to do one in my son's room, and I just get shocks from me.
Yeah, so something's been altered in your composition. Maybe not your DNA, but your composition. So
the other thing, and it may sound ridiculous, but I'm going to lay it out there because I think eventually this will come out. When we had a past episode, and this lady says that you could see into other times. What they did show me is another Earth with people like us. And you know what? I stand on the ground to believe it to be true because of the vision that they showed me.
And they showed you these other people?
It's people like us. It's a whole race like us. It's a super Earth, bigger, no cars, nothing like that.
Right.
It's and I said to myself, where is this coming from in my mind? Where is this coming from? And all of these came right after July 2007. I was getting flashes of this other place. Now, why I think I'm still chipped is because a lot of electronics act weird next to me.
Yeah.
And either things just get haywire. Now, again, having a haunted life, I know that entities and spirits do affect these things, but it's as if sometimes I go into this conscious state where it's like they can take over. I don't know 100% exactly what's going on. You have more of an idea being in the field.
Can I ask you this? What did these other people look like?
Us.
Can you describe them?
Just like us. there's no difference. They look just like us, just like the human race.
And I'm not hearing anything again.
Norene, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you. I can hear you both.
All right, and I really wanted to hear this. Okay, so Phil, what do they look like?
Okay, so they look no different than us. These people are just like us, except for their and this because it's enormous. The flashes that were given to me of what it looks like. They're people just like us, but there's no sickness, there's no disease. The way I was shown it was that it's like a organic earth of us. It's a healthier being of who we are.
So they're just, so they're like white skin, blonde, are they all different races?
Everything that we are, every race, every
So
nationality.
was it just in our dimension that you were shown? Like, I mean,
Yeah. And I truly believe it to be true. That one day science will discover it.
Well,
If
I mean,
they don't
it's
know
already
it.
in theory that there's other parallel Earths to this one, and we play out on different Earths. I mean, that's already a theory.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I was just curious to ask you that question because I've had the exact same report from two other people in the last 10 days that have been to this other Earth and seen this and called it another Earth, very similar to ours. The only difference was is that they said the people that they saw kind of had orange, tan, yellow skin. Is the only difference. Other than that, your description is exactly the same.
Maybe
So
they ended
that's
up in a
interesting.
different part of it.
Yeah, a different part of it, or slightly out of phase. You know, you got to remember that there could be this other Earth. There are missing planets in this solar system.
Yep.
There are at least two. That's part of some of the books I've done. There's at least two that blew up. One of them used to be in the orbit roughly where Mars is now, and the other one used to be where the asteroid belt is. And they were super Earths. They were bigger. They were denser. They had higher gravity. They had probably atmospheres. And what it may simply be is that in this timeline or this dimension, those planets were destroyed for whatever reason. But in these other alternate timelines or alternate dimensions that are almost parallel to ours, just slightly out of frequency, out of phase with us, that those planets did not get destroyed. And maybe that's what you're looking at is the root source of the human race itself was from these planets. So, and they still survive in those parallel universes. Although, again, parallel universes are really hard things to prove except through experiential experiences like you had. There's really not much you can do to prove it, but you can either take your experience as genuine or you can believe that it's not genuine, and I tend to think that they are genuine. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Now I have a question. When I was actually living in this case for the 4 months, I had a lot of dreams where I was in a hospital-like area. It was all white, and I was on like a table. I couldn't see who was working on me, but I got the impression it was like pretty much a hospital and that I was sick and like being worked on. Is that something that's common with you?
Oh yeah. And I mean, Karissa, you've had a few health problems, and and I don't know if you've talked about them publicly, but you and I have talked about them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the ways you can look at that is that it could be that it's being offered to give you help with that, and maybe you should sit down and have a conversation with these guys and say, okay, I give you permission to work on me and help me with these problems and get me through them, because they can definitely do that. We'll see the result of my request in a year or so. I asked that over the next year certain things would change about my physical body, and so we'll see what happens. But you can ask them to help you, and they may say, okay, well, it's going to make you a little bit uncomfortable. In fact, I know somebody who arranges these kinds of things and sometimes participates in them in the 8th dimension or whatever. So if you want to talk to her,
my thyroid is kicking my butt. I'm so tired all the time.
I can, and she can work on you, and maybe some of the entities will come in and work on you. So
it might be scary since some of them,
It might be scary. I was warned that it might be scary. She goes, if you see some of these guys, some of these fuckers, their energy is good, but they look scary as hell. And you have to understand. Did I just say F-bomb on your show? I'm sorry. They said that that I may be frightened by what I see. And fortunately, so far, I haven't seen them. I mean, the only times I've really known anything about them is when they've just left the room. Like, I've heard them running up the stairs after they worked on me, and I'll wake up and there's a huge bruise on my shoulder, and I did nothing to my shoulder. So, so this kind of thing's going on. So it may be that you don't necessarily, it may not be scary because you may not experience it consciously.
Okay.
Which would be good. I can't promise you that, but that's possible.
Do you hear about a lot of cases that have some sort of paranormal element to them?
You hear about cases like that. Yeah, I think I mentioned previously that Streamer had reported that there is a significant amount of cases where people see dead relatives with the aliens when they're taken aboard spaceships, that there are dead relatives there, and their relatives are young and healed and, in really good shape, and they have these experiences, and they don't know whether the aliens have taken the memories from their own minds and created these fake beings, or whether they really are in another dimension, on another plane, talking to their old dead relatives. So yeah, I've definitely had reports like that.
Have you ever had any more sinister reports come your way?
Yeah, I guess. The thing is that sinister, I think a lot of times is in the perception of the experience. It's like, what does that mean? I mean, I've had people who I think are less mentally stable than some of the other people I've talked to that tell me about these bases they've been taken to where humans and aliens are working together, and they've seen all these really horrible things. But I'm not sure I believe that those stories are correct. I think that they might be misinterpreting things that they're seeing. So.
Well, I haven't been taken to a base yet.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. Do you have anything?
Oh, no. Okay, guys, hold on. All right, hold on.
Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
I don't know what the hell. I didn't touch anything. It wasn't me.
I didn't touch anything either. Can you guys see me?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Norene, just let us know when we're back live.
You are live. You never went off. I mean,
Really?
no, I'm sorry. You are live. You're live. But
Okay.
we're waiting for Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, honey. We just don't see your video yet.
It's spinning.
It's searching.
Yeah. We're having a lot of issues tonight, guys, just as always.
Somebody's Wi-Fi punked out. I don't know what happened, but
It was not mine. Mine didn't show up at all. Mine was just like...
never yours.
It wasn't, honestly, this time. Sometimes it's Disney, and I just say it's not. That's what I do.
Everybody, thanks for joining the show tonight. We have a big crowd tonight.
So, why don't we make this an interactive show, Norene? During the show, why don't we see if they have any questions in chat room that want to be answered?
Okay, I you know what? I want to know is... Okay, you know how everybody is saying, and they were saying it in the chat room as well, that aliens and demons are the same. And I don't know how that started. So, yes, we want to know, are aliens and demons one and the same?
Well, I think you can have demons masquerading as aliens in order to push their demonic agenda. I think you can have aliens masquerading as demons in order to get a point across, almost for theatrical purposes. So I think you can go both ways, and you have definitely, aliens are not all good. I mean, there's all these people that think, oh, there are space brothers, and they're here to save us from ourselves, and all this stuff, and it's like, no, not necessarily. There are extraterrestrials and aliens that have a malevolent agenda, that they're malevolent species, or at least they're morally indifferent species that are here, and so you can't always say that they're all good. I think a lot of them are good, but there's no proof or guarantee that they're all good. So I could certainly see dark entities on both sides working together. And the way I think the universe is that I think it's just balance. It's balance between dark and light, and sometimes the dark prevails and sometimes the light prevails. And it's just this constant sort of back and forth chess match that keeps going on. So, I mean, are aliens and demons the same thing? Sometimes, and sometimes not. I don't like to give you a, flimsy milquetoast kind of answer like that, but I think that that's really the truth from what I've been able to figure out.
Okay, so the viewers, if you have any questions, do you want to start typing your questions in?
Now, when we're waiting for the viewers' questions, Mike, this whole season's going to be kind of exploring and trying to figure out, as best as we can anyway, if there is a connection. Is there anything that you can recommend?
Well, excuse me, I'm chewing on ice, I'm thirsty. From the alien perspective, I really, really do highly recommend Whitley Strieber's books, Communion, Transformation, and I forget the third one. But they are a very, very deep examination of his experiences of alien abduction. He wrestles constantly with the question of, are these aliens? Are these demons? Are they here to steal my soul? Are they here to, and I think those are fascinating books to read from a philosophical perspective, among many others. And it really deals with this question. And if you're coming at it from the alien side, that's where I would start. If you're coming at it from the spiritual side, I don't know where to start. You guys would be better experts on that kind of thing than me. But I really think that Strieber's first two books, at least, Communion and Transformation, are definitely the way you want to go in terms of understanding things.
Send me the information to the books in my messenger, because I won't remember.
Okay.
So, Mike, do you know anybody in Pennsylvania that would put me into regression to see what my encounters actually were?
I would actually say no, that I don't know anybody. I did know a few people in Pennsylvania, but I kind of stole his girlfriend, and he's not going to help me. Sorry. You know me, I'm always irreverent here. I would recommend you get in touch with Pennsylvania MUFON.
Okay.
And the Mutual UFO Network in Pennsylvania, and ask them if they know anybody they consider reliable for that kind of work. And if not, simply put it out there on the web. Somebody will come along, and definitely you should be able to find somebody in the area who does good work.
Do they
The important thing, is you get something.
Go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, do they actually like putting people into that regression phase? Hello?
Mike?
What?
Oh.
You totally just broke up, but...
Yeah. What was your question again, Karissa?
Do they actually like putting people into the regression phases? Because I've heard from others that they don't really prefer to do it because it can be so traumatic.
Yeah, it can be very traumatic, and it's not considered reliable always, because sometimes some of the people that do the regression lead you, ask leading questions. But I found that most of them are, really, that's kind of a red herring that the skeptics put out there. I found most hypnotic regression is usually pretty disciplined, and it's the kind of thing where you can definitely get benefit from it. So I would say that MUFON's probably going to be a bit more skeptical of that kind of thing, but that just means that if they do put you in touch with somebody, it's probably somebody that's at the top rung of the ladder in terms of their ability to do that and do it with integrity. That's the key thing, is you don't lead the witness, you let them tell you what they see.
Yep.
That's true. Norene, any questions in chat?
Oh, yeah. Jane Ann Bray wants to know, how do you know if you have been abducted by aliens?
You don't know. You're not gonna know for sure, because usually these experiences happen in an alternate conscious state. In other words, you're not fully awake. You don't fully remember the experience. Some of the things we talked about tonight. You have partial memories or fractured memories, and you might be tense or anxious or scared for no reason. you're going to look for marks on your body that you can't explain. Like, the bruise on my shoulder from the other day, I did nothing a few days beforehand. And so I don't know where that bruise came from. It's certainly just sitting there and sleeping and hanging around and watching TV, watching sports with my bro, going to a movie. I didn't do anything to it. I didn't lift anything. So it's kind of like obviously something happened to me and that I can't account for. So those kinds of things are ways you can kind of add it up, two and two together. The other thing is that if you do have a completely conscious experience, I would say believe it, because it's probably something that really did happen. So there are people that do occasionally have experiences kind of like Phil in full consciousness. I know somebody else that had an experience when she was very little, and she saw what she thought were skeletons walking through her backyard. And they weren't skeletons, they were something else, but that was what her mind at 4 or 5 or 6 years old, convinced her that she was seeing. They ended up being these very long, spindly, scary alien type guys that were hanging around her and her mom. So, there's no way to tell for sure, but there are lots of things, evidence you can look for, and you can actually find a lot of that stuff online.
Can I? You want to take another? Do you want to take another question, Phil? I mean,
yeah.
Okay. This is probably for Mike, whoever. Christian Nicola, why do certain people get picked by aliens to be in contact with them?
In my opinion, because they're open to it, or because they had a contract before you were ever born to conduct this kind of work. I think that's part of it also. So,
really?
I really think it's a spiritual contract, because I believe the structure of the universe, and this is just what I've come to think after years and years of dealing in all this esoteric stuff, is that the universe is basically, contracts and trusts. By trust, I mean that it's all set up as a legal trust, that our legal trusts reflect how the universe works, and that everything is agreed to under contract. So I think it's just a question of, you agreed to do this work before you were ever born. And maybe it's an experience you wanted to have in your lifetime, the experience of being different, the experience of feeling so different from anybody else, or maybe it was that the aliens needed help with learning certain things, and you said, okay, well, I'll do some of that work with you during my lifetime. So I think that's really what it is. It's an agreement that you've made. And however, like any contract or agreement, you can change it if it's not working for you anymore. So that's an important element of empowerment to understand.
All right, I have a question. I've had several alien abductees on my show, one being Brett Oldham, and they all said that they remember as a young child, around 5 years old, of seeing the aliens, and then it just continued on from there. And then from what I understand also, it's just not that one individual. They take the whole family. So what do you know about that?
Yeah, that's also very common, that it basically starts in childhood. It seems to go through a number of years, and then usually at some point in life it fades away, but not necessarily. It does seem to be centered around the more reproductively active years. That's part of it also. And also entire families. So it definitely has something to do with genetics and bloodlines. But you have to remember, that's just maybe one type of abduction and one set of aliens who are interested in that kind of thing. It may not be all experiences and all aliens are along those lines, but that is very common and very frequent, that it does follow bloodlines and follows families. I have a couple of friends we investigated on a show I did called Uncovering Aliens for Animal Planet back in 2014, Tom Reed and his brother Matthew. And their whole family has had abduction experiences for years and years and years, and it's just taken them a long time to remember them.
Mm-hmm. Also, this one, Brett Oldham said he is still being abducted, and he's I think he's in his 50s. So do they continue? Why would they continue to take him as he gets older? What would they want him for? And each time, but Mike, each time was a horrible, horrible experience.
Yeah. I think it's because the work's not done. And, that's part of it. If there's some work to do, then the work's not done. And I mean, I know people that have had abduction experiences that find them horrible, horrific, terrible. And I've also known people that think it's ultimately in the long run a good thing. So it just depends on the perspective that you take on the experience itself.
And Phil, I have a question for you. If you've had this alien experience, have you ever thought of being hypnotized to find out?
Yeah, no one's able to come forward. I've tried asking people.
No one will do it for him in any aspect. I mean, I've been there trying to find him someone, and everyone's pretty much been like, nope.
Yeah, and Phil, some people can't be hypnotized. There are some people who just are really resistant to it, that they don't give up the level of control that needs to be given up. So you may be one of those people too. I mean, it's maybe really hard to hypnotize you.
But I haven't had the opportunity.
No one will do it because they're scared.
Yeah, well then keep asking, because there's somebody out there that will.
Oh yeah.
Someone reliable.
I mean, I know people, but I don't believe they're in your area. That's the only problem. But I know people that will take your case.
Over, not in person?
Oh, no.
No. I don't think that would be the best way to go about it. But
No.
I think it could be done over Skype or something, but I don't think that's the best way to do it.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Oh, God, Phil, I had another question for you. Phil, do you still believe that you're are being abducted by these aliens?
I believe, from what I've learned and understand, is that like these crafts that people will get pictures of, the way I'm understanding is that they're see-through. You can't see them. And I believe that a lot of the shadow people that happen here, not all, because some things are pure evil, but some of these shadow things are so intelligent that happen here. And sometimes I hear walking on the roof, and I'll have even people sleep on, like something's walking on the roof.
I experience that a lot here.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Karissa or myself or my wife. It was other people that have come here. And it doesn't happen all the time.
I think Crystal told me she experienced it too one
Really?
night. Yeah.
And you have to say to yourself, what's going on here? And then, Norene, another show that we did a few episodes ago, a lady had said that, I forgot which one it was, that PA, this part of Pennsylvania, was a hot spot.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bucks County Flap, we're not right there. That's where I used to live. The Bucks County Flap is the hot spot. But it hasn't been active right in that area in some time. So who's saying it didn't move to the Lehigh Valley? Follows.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember living in Bucks County under the Bucks County Flap. Which is probably why I got shipped, according to your friend Mike. Because I lived right in the zone.
Okay, well, it happens.
Yeah.
All right, we have.
Norene, any other questions?
Oh yeah, from Joyce Lynn. Do you believe that aliens live underground and under the sea in all parts of the earth?
Yeah, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Whoever.
I didn't used to, but I've been recently told by experiences and experiencers that there's two civilizations living in the hollowed out areas under the earth, and that at some point we're going to be encountering them and dealing with them, probably within our lifetimes. That they're ready to come up above the ground and kind of hang out on the planet with us. So. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you think about the actual volume of this planet, it's so enormous. I mean, we don't look at the surface. There's so much space. You could go down 1 mile and hollow out incredibly vast caverns that could hide literally billions of beings. And you could go down 2 miles and create another space with, hollow them out. That would be just as gigantic, that could contain billions more. I mean, I think this planet, if you don't go too far down into the ground, you could have huge, vast civilizations that exist everywhere on the planet, just over and over and over again. You could sort of create, and I hear rumors about how these civilizations operate, and that there's like luminous plants and lichens and bacteria that generate light, and heat is not a problem because it's very warm in the interior of the earth. So. Yeah, I think that's probably true. I have no evidence of it yet, but I've heard these stories, and I'm not going to be surprised if something along those lines comes out.
What about under the sea?
Yeah, theoretically be also possible.
Mm-hmm.
Also possible. Because there's a lot of space there. I mean, the oceans relative to the actual diameter of the Earth don't go all that deep.
Well, there is a spot in San Francisco that people are seeing lights underneath the ocean, and it's off of a cliff.
So, who knows exactly what these are? These are the kinds of things that we just we hear about, but we can't verify at this point. But maybe we'll start having more information come out on those kinds of things.
All right, we have another question from Sarah Farnham. Norene, my question is, how many people in our government are aliens?
How many people in government our government are aliens? I have a friend named Robert O. Dean, who is actually very famous in the UFO community because he used to work at the NATO headquarters in Brussels, Belgium. Back in the 1960s, he was a command sergeant major, and one night on the watch, his colonel told him to go into the document safe, go open the document safe up, and he opened it up, and he took out a document that was stacked as high as about 10 books, and he took the document, he slapped it on Dean's desk, and he said, "Here, this will keep you awake. Start reading that." And he read it, and it was basically the entire history of the human race's interaction with aliens from the entire history of the planet, back millions of years of aliens coming here. And what he's told me on several occasions is when he was dealing with extraterrestrials or aliens, guys that he thought were aliens inside the government, at one point, one of them who claimed he was an Anunnaki, an alien, said, "Bob, you have to understand, extraterrestrials aren't in the government. Extraterrestrials are the government." That essentially the entire government was extraterrestrials. So that's what he said.
Makes sense.
If you've ever read the story, The 12th Planet, and the story of the Anunnaki coming here to the Earth from this other planet in the solar system that's way, way out there called Nibiru, what they did was really pretty bad. I mean, they were here, they genetically designed the human race to be a worker race for them. They had wars, they had all kinds of conflicts. They basically screwed the entire planet up really, really bad. And then they left about 6,000 BC, and only a few of them stayed behind. They were supposedly giants. There were a few who were like the worker bees who stayed behind and made themselves gods and kings on the earth, but they all eventually died out. The last of them was named Goliath, and he was slain by David. And after that, they were gone, but then others decided to stay here and try to fix the karma of all the bad stuff they had done on Earth. I mean, there were nuclear exchanges. There was all kinds of stuff that happened. They were very bad. They caused a lot of pain and suffering. And supposedly, some of them are still here trying to fix that whole mess that they created back, thousands and thousands of years ago.
I did promise Mike that it would only be an hour show since he's sick.
Yes.
I'm sick too.
I managed to not throw up the entire hour.
Okay, all right.
But I did make that promise to you, Michael. I want to say thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah,
It was great.
Yeah, it's been great having you. I learned a little bit tonight too.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one dealing with some of these things. So it's been a great insight for me as well.
Great way to kick off season 2.
Yeah. So,
Right.
well, what I would do, Mike, you can go whenever you want to go. Norene, I'll take a couple other questions
Okay.
before we end everything, too.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you,
Bye,
Mike.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Feel better.
Thanks.
Okay, is there any questions for Phil or Karissa? Mike has left the show. He's not feeling well, and we were lucky to have him on as long as we did.
Oh, yes.
So what's been happening lately? Oh, Phil, oh my God, everybody, don't forget. Where's my calendar?
Good date.
Oh, Phil is coming on the show July 21st, and he promised to tell us all.
You're busy, man.
Yes.
Tell us,
Yes.
what are you gonna talk about on the 21st?
It's going to raise eyebrows. It's going to shock a lot of people. Some people are coming forward, putting messages on some of the videos that knew Herman Slater. It's going to be an eye-opener, I can tell you that. It really is. And expect the unexpected on that show, I can tell you that. Because a lot of people will be listening. A lot of secret societies will be listening. It's a date that, once you put it out there, I made sure that everybody's going to be watching it set in stone. And it'll be a great experience for everybody, and a learning curve and an eye-opener as well.
I'll catch the repeat.
Karissa
Sorry,
won't
but
be here.
I'll be at an event,
But, yeah,
so I'll catch the repeat.
I'm looking forward to it.
I won't be able to watch with all our friends in secret, but
So I'm looking forward to that. Save the date. So, tonight's show is interesting because a lot of the things that happened to me in the past, through the 70s up until recently, I do live a haunted life, but yet there are things here that I believe are interdimensional.
Mhm.
A lot of the shadow people, some of these things aren't ghostly. They're just things that they can't explain what they are. They're very quick. So we're learning a lot,
yeah.
And I think that this new season that we're doing, season 2, that some of the experiments that we're going to do, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot to see what's going on around here.
Yeah, and I'm glad we went with a roundtable discussion tonight,
Oh, yeah.
too, as the opening episode, just because I wanted to give the viewers some insight that might not have experienced a connection or maybe think everything is the same, because maybe they are. But, it's going to be a pretty exciting season. We have a lot of awesome guests already lined up, so I'm excited, and I can't wait to get into this and the experiment end of things.
Oh, yeah, and aliens, some people may find it hard to believe, but I can tell you straight out, it's all real. There's no doubt in my mind that it's all real. Now, Karissa, back about 2 years ago in this basement on this table,
Mhm.
it was me, you, and someone else, and we did an experiment, one at a time. And in the experiment, I asked you to go back, and we all were in a similar place that remembers.
Yeah,
Now, you want to talk about that?
Well, to talk about that, I have to go back before I even met you or knew about you,
Yep.
my friend. I will never forget that I was at a guided meditation group. This is back when I had a lot more time. I missed my groups, but getting to the point. We were asked to imagine sitting on a bench. Only problem is that when I went into the meditation, I fell into almost like a trance type thing where I was just gone. You can call it astro projecting, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but I was gone. I fell and I was gone. And I arrived in this old farmhouse. It had this huge wraparound porch, and I remember sitting there. And I remember there was a little girl with dark hair, a guy with dark hair, and a little boy with dark hair. The little girl said, Mommy, you're going to be okay. Things are about to get better. And she introduced herself. It was then that she turned around and said, but I'm much more powerful than you. And I said, okay. But for some reason, that farmhouse felt like home. And I can't describe it other than saying it was home. I also want to say that's probably why I was so drawn to the farmhouse that I currently live in. It felt very familiar and very, it was home.
Mm.
And I remember one of the nights that you and I were talking about random things. That was one of the things that you said, what feels like home, and I said, farmhouse. And I described this giant white farmhouse with the wraparound porch.
And what's interesting about that is that we had someone else down here at the same time.
Yep.
And they said something similar, not exact, but similar. And, people say to me, well, how do you know that there's this super Earth with another human race? There is. There is, because some people, like myself, I was given this strong, strong vision of what it is. And they're flashcards that go through the mind. So whatever the new technology is that does to us, whether some of us are walking GPS or we're meant to tell people things and share information, which is possible. How would Karissa have a similar experience? Because I put a picture on my Facebook 2 years ago of what she's talking about, what I'm even telling her, because it's something that I was up late at night and I'm like, I remember this place. I remember it.
The other lady that came forward actually said that it's actually kind of similar, that a lot of people tend to have that farmhouse-like vision, but different people involved in it. And I asked her what she thought it was, and she said, you know, from her experiences and research, that she believes that a lot of people, that's your soul families in the other dimension as well. And she said that, you know, that seems to be like a meeting spot, and she's researched it from past life experiences, you know, near-death experiences. A lot of people see that farmhouse or a farmhouse very similar, and it's interesting.
Wow.
It is. So it's been a great show tonight, and one of the experiments that I want to do actually this season is outside of my backyard. You think we could do that?
With my computer, sure, we can try. Anything's possible.
Because we want to show you maybe that we could show the viewers some of the things that we do see back there.
You know what we
give
could
it a
do?
shot.
You know, be a little bit easier and probably run smoother. We could pre-record a little clip of the backyard, because that would probably run
Oh,
smoother.
yeah, I can show.
Get your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, why don't you do that, and I'll show the clips to the viewers.
That would be a lot smoother.
Yeah.
We'll do that before I go away.
Yeah. So, do you have any questions, Norene? Anybody in chat before we wrap up this first episode?
No, there's no more questions. They had some questions for Mike, but there was...
Well, I just want to say that you guys can get in touch with Mike Bara on Facebook. He also has a few websites out there. Read his books. He's a great guy. One of my very good friends. So if you have any questions for him, you can send them to me, and I'll send them to him. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he was sick.
Yeah. All right, so do you want to say goodnight to everybody? And everyone, thank you so much for joining. The season 2, the first episode was awesome. Karissa and Phil want to say goodnight and end the show?
Thank you, Norene. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
And it's been a pleasure.
We're excited for season 2, people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Norene, again for having us back for another season. I'm hoping this season we do even more crazy things and get a little more wild and out of the box.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Okay. Good night.
Great.
Good night, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.